Thank you. Thank you, Mark. And thank you to everyone. I'd like to begin by just noting that I'm so appreciative of what everybody has put into the chat box. Your kavanah, your current state, your emotional sense. And I appreciate how candid everyone chooses to be and how much that helps us to be a community. So that's where I'd like to begin this morning. And Mark, I'm going to take it right off from where I'm going to segue. You began to talk about the Shofar project and about the upcoming Shemitah year. And yesterday, some of you perhaps were involved in the Shemitah Summit, which was produced by Chazon with a number of co-sponsors, including IJS. And I was also honored to lead a session yesterday. And so Shemitah is just right here. It's right in front of me. And it's infusing how I have looked at this week's Torah portion. So, Adi, if you would do a screen share. Thank you. There's a text that we are perhaps familiar with. It says Numbers. It should be Deuteronomy. I actually changed that, but somehow I must have sent the wrong one. So I apologize. This is Deuteronomy 8:3. It's Parashat Ekev. And this is a verse that talks about the fact that humans don't live by bread alone. And it says, Al kol notza fi havaya yichya ha'adam. By everything that emanates from the mouth of the holy presence does humanity live. And I want us to just sit with that for a minute. What does it mean that this emanation from the mouth of the holy presence, from the mouth of God? And we can look at that. We can look at that physically. We can say that from the mouth of God, almost like a mama bird feeding a baby bird, that we are literally nourished, sustained. But when I saw the word emanates, what clicked for me is that we are alive because of the breath of the holy presence, the breath of the Creator. That comes also out of the mouth of the Holy One, breath. And what also comes out of our mouths, hopefully, wisdom, heart, kindness. And these are emanations through which we live. And I took it a step further, and I thought about the very planet, the breath of the planet, which is also an extension of the Creator's breath. And the food that sprouts, the air that sustains us, the water, the trees, the sun, the soil. And all of these are emanations of God. So that when we think about the Shemitah year, and Mark beautifully placed it as the year of release, it's also a year where we let the land rest. It's as if we're saying, you know what, God, we're letting you regenerate so that you can continue to help us regenerate. And so as we move through our time today, I'd like us to be cognizant of this interrelationship, this interaction between spirit, the life of spirit infusing us with life, and us exhaling, and us bringing consciousness and conscientiousness and grace. And therefore, we continue to nourish that which is without. So we have this cycle. And taking it one step further, a text that you also may be familiar with in this week's Torah portion. Umaltem et orlat levavchem, ve'arpechem lo takshu od. And the translation that was in one of the Tanakhs that I was using said, "You shall cut away the barrier of your heart," which is beautiful. And the literal translation is, "You shall circumcise the foreskin of your heart." What does that mean? That we will cut away inside of us the places where we've hardened ourselves, where we have created a sense of resistance. And what I will say is a resistance to letting in the breath and the nourishment of the Holy One. And the verse concludes, "And no longer stiffen your neck." So as we move into our meditation today, we will be working with these themes of softening and bringing in the energy that emanates. So I invite us to find a spot. As Mark said, you may choose to sit on a chair or a cushion. You may choose to be standing or walking. You may even choose to be reclining. Whatever position you choose, I invite you to find that space. And for a moment, allow yourself to connect with the light. That light may be coming in from outside, from the sun. It may be a light in your room. It may be the light of spirit or the light of heart that is always available. And if it's comfortable for you to do so, I invite you to breathe into that light, allowing it to suffuse you. You might imagine it flowing in through your third eye, the top of your head, your ears, all the orifices of your face, your eyes, whether they're open or softened, closed, your nostrils, your mouth. And see if you can see that light as one of the emanations of the Holy Presence that nourishes you. And allow that light to course through your chin, your jaw, your neck. See if it softens your neck as it pours through, or if it could. Through to your collarbones and your shoulders. Pouring down through your arms, all the way out through the tips of your fingers. Into your chest as you expand in your breath. And as you release in your breath. Warming you all the way down into the belly. The hips. And flowing out through the thighs, lower legs, and down into the feet. Just allow yourself to sit with that for a moment. Seeing if there's a place that might need more light. More nourishment. And as we recognize that we are bathed in this beautiful, healing, nourishing energy, perhaps we can recognize that we are being held in all the hardships of this past year plus. In the recent tragedies connected to climate, and the hurts in our culture and our world. Can we feel nourished enough and light enough to soften, to let that light seep in to the darkest places, the most scared places, the most hurting places, the most angry places. And soften our hearts. Knowing that the light that emanates from the mouth of the Holy One helps us to be nourished and to be whole. We'll sit quietly for a little bit with these thoughts and images. And when it's time to complete, I'll ring a bell. as we bring our attention back to the room, to our virtual room, to our community, I'd like to invite us to remember that we are continuously in this space of nourishment. And when we forget, or when things are hard, we can remember. We can remember that we are sustained literally by that which emanates from the mouth of spirit in so many ways. And as we move into this preparation time for the new year, and we get closer to the month of Elul, and we're thinking about Shemitah, which is release. It's also Shabbat, Shabbaton, the great Shabbos, the great rest. That all of that is about returning to a sense of settledness, to our deepest wisdom, to our connection with spirit in whatever way we understand that, and our connection with others and the planet. So I'd like us to close with Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach's Return Again. It's a melody you may know. I invite you to sing it with me in your space if you know it, or feel free to simply receive it if you'd like. And Adi, once again, if you would share the screen with us, for us. Thank you. Before I sing, I invite us to think about these words. What is the land of your soul? I capitalize that L for us to really spend time. What is that for us? Who, what we are, and where we experience ourselves as being born and reborn and reborn. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. And may the light and the nourishment that emanates from the mouth of God help you again and again to return to wholeness. Blessings.
Thank you so much, Robin. A beautiful and restorative practice.
You're welcome.
Which we seal as we do every day with an opportunity for those who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or if you're holding some grief, to join us in the Mourner's Kaddish. Thanks to Adi for sharing the words on the screen. You're invited to share the name or names of anyone who you're holding in your heart today in the chat box, either now or after we recite the Kaddish, and invite you to rise with me in body or in spirit to recite it. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbi.
Amen.
Yamad, Yibrach, Yirteh, Yamich, Malchuteh. Chayakon, Yamachon, Yamei, Kol, Bet Yisrael, Ba'agala, Yisman, Amen.
Amen.
Barach, Olam, Amen, Amen. Itara,
Shalom,
Aritman,
Vidara, Vidale,
Dar, Hilal,
Vidal,
Shmita, Ila,
Yalam,
Mikol,
Kulil,
Birchata, Vishra,
Shira, Katus, Habin,
Vishra,
Handan, Rabin,
Iran,
Rupan,
Hama,
Amen.
Hey, Shlama, Rabban,
Rabban,
Shemaya,
Shemaya, B'chaim,
Chaim,
Aleinu,
Aleinu,
Aleinu, Amen.
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 Shalom,
Shalom,
say Shalom
Yashem,
Aleinu,
Aleinu,
True Israel.
Israel, Nam Kol
Amen.
Yoshvei Teva, Yeru, Amen. Thank you all for being here today for this practice. We invite you to join us if you're leading us now. Tomorrow, Rabbi Shuli Passow of Congregation B'nai Jeshurun in New York City will be leading us as we sit into Shabbat. Our Friday sits are always so lovely to join together, to enter into Shabbat together. We hope you'll join us then, or if not, then next week. For those who are able and interested, you're welcome to stay on for a few minutes to stay with that teaching, beautiful teaching by Rabbi Robin Damsky. I'm going to put in the chat box the link to In the Gardens. And Robin also is the founder director of something called Limitless Judaism. Maybe you'll say a few words about that, Robin, about that endeavor. And in case if you're staying on, if you have a question that you'd like to share or put to Robin, please put it in the chat box and preface it with a question. I'll try to keep an eye on that. And for those who are leaving us, hope you're safe and well for the rest of the day. And we hope you'll see you tomorrow or sometime soon. And of course, thanks to, as always, our rock, Adi Stein, for holding it all together for us. Robin, thank you so much. And it's I want to stay focused. This 15 minutes we do at the end of the set, I like to think of it as an opportunity for us to integrate that experience of the practice and the teaching, and maybe even set an intention to bring it forward into the rest of the day. In other words, purpose of our practice is not to, gulp some oxygen down and then get back into the rat race or whatever race we're involved with, but actually to infuse the rest. It's kind of an infusion process, is how at least I would like to think of it. So we want to bring this practice into the rest of our day and into our daily lives. And here's what I heard. I heard you bringing that verse from the Torah portion about everything emerging from the mouth of the divine as a reminder that we are nourished always. And the connection with Shemitah, make sure I want to get this right, that the Shemitah is that we're, as you said, it's not just releasing, letting go. Literally, Shemitah means release. And it means letting the land rest. So it's a year of letting the land have its Shabbat, letting it rest and renew and be restored. And we might be afraid to do that for, logical reasons. Like, what do you mean? What am I going to eat? Right. And the counterpoint is this idea that there is a truth, which I think we each have to test out in our own experience. And for some, it may be very challenging to feel like it's okay. Your needs will be cared for. You are being nourished in ways that you are not aware of. And if you pause, you might be able to notice that. So your meditation of that, with that very visceral kind of embodied sense of, wow, there's a flow that is renewing and, as you said, nourishing me every moment, whether I'm aware of it or not, can ease the fear that allows me to let go, allow the land to rest, or allow things to be. Is that where you were getting at?
Yeah, and so I think you picked it up beautifully, Mark. You asked me a little bit about Limitless Judaism, and this is a project that's had a soft launch, but its firm launch will happen soon, hopefully. I injured myself and had to kind of step away. A kind of a release, I suppose, a forced release, which enabled me to think. But Limitless Judaism is it's about the dynamic of our personal well-being connected to spirit and the well-being of the planet, and that all of those are completely and totally interdependent.
Mm-hmm.
So that as we heal and grow ourselves, we heal and grow our planet. And so this idea of being nourished is something that I think, as we those of us who take time to have some kind of a practice may feel more connected to, but still can be afraid to remember, or afraid that it won't show up, or just I haven't stopped today to remember that I am held, that I am supported.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me very clear that this letting the earth rest is really about letting ourselves rest. That it is this breath, right? We say that the trees breathe out the very oxygen that we breathe in, and we exhale the very CO2 that they need to survive. And so we are in this pulsing life balance with all of creation. And the opportunity for us to exhale and remember that and keep it with us. This could be our Shemitah practice, right? To simply say, I am held, I am in relationship. And as I am held, how can I hold? How can I support? So that the interplay of caring for the planet that essentially sustains us is continuing to be in motion.
Yeah, thank you. There's a question here from Teddy. Just wondering about what emanates from the mouth of Adonai. Is it light, everything, sustains and nourishes, reality, sound? Big question.
Yeah. So I love that translation, which was not a translation that I was particularly familiar with in the past, but the word emanate, when we hear emanation in Judaism, if we have any relationship with Kabbalah, we think about the sefirot, and the sefirot are emanations of different energies of God, of the spirit. And so, if we look back to the beginning of Genesis, God breathes life into the human that God creates.
Mm-hmm.
So as that's breathes into our nostrils. Well, breathing could have been out of God's nose, but also could have been out of the mouth. So it seems to me that the emanation is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And as humans, that emanation is our most divine expression and also our least divine expression. We even see in the Torah God's emanations that we would say are not necessarily expressions of God's best self, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think it is. And I'm wondering about this, Robin. I'm kind of thinking that this year of COVID, year plus of COVID, this ongoing COVID,
right.
I kind of experienced this past year plus as I thought about that as kind of a Shemitah year, that I found, in spite of course, the, infinite suffering that has been experienced, I did find some consolation in watching the scenes of regeneration and of, the enforced cessation of human activity and plundering of the planet, which enabled it to breathe, enabled the earth to breathe.
Right. And wildlife.
Briefly, yeah.
And wildlife showing up in places where it hadn't in years and years. And the irony there is that now that we have begun to emerge again, as it were, the pollution level is rising, et cetera, et cetera. And so, can we as humans focus on, and this was one of the questions that was raised yesterday in the Shemitah Summit, can we focus on ways to really be more in an equal give and take with the earth, as opposed to a take, and the earth gets, it's like the giving tree.
It's a corrective. Yeah. So it's kind of a corrective or balancing. So
Right.
it leads into a good question from Laura, as asking about what does it mean? Would you speak to what it means to let God regenerate, to in turn enable ourselves to regenerate? And maybe that term regeneration is a helpful one to apply to Shemitah. It's a year of, Shabbat for us, because we use that phrase, God speaks on Shabbat of Vayinafash. It's in the Kiddush for Friday
Yeah.
night, right? Vayinafash, and God was re-souled, regenerated. But
Nice.
there's kind of a process there, right? And that this is a year-long version of that. Regeneration is probably a good word. I don't know. What do you think? What do you mean by that when you speak about letting God regenerate?
I think that what you said is quite lovely. We have places in our Torah where God changes as a result of human contact, where there's an interaction between God and Abraham around Sodom and Gomorrah, where God literally changes God's mind based on Abraham's interaction. And a similar thing happens later with Moses, where God is fed up with us yet again and says, I'd like to just get rid of everybody here and create a new line from you. And Moses says, it's not going to be so good for your reputation with the Egyptians. You might want to rethink that. The point is that in our Torah, which is a very, very ancient text, we have more than one example of our behavior changing and affecting God. And I'm careful to use that word God because it has so much challenge for us all. But what I'd like to say is that we affect spirit. And while we can't necessarily see that the way we might like, we can see that when we touch a person's soul. That's a very solid way of being able to say, I can see spirit creating transformation and creating regeneration. And we can see it as we tend the earth. So there are many, many ways that even if we can't understand what God is or find a way to materialize that, we can see the effect of spirit being given, regenerating the spirit that we see around us and things that are more embodied, if you will. Is that helpful? I think, Bruce, you are. Mark, are you frozen?
It looks like Mark might be frozen.
Yeah, I think he might be. So, I'll just look. I'll pick it up myself here. I see questions about how do we help the earth during the Shemitah year, besides doing what the Torah says about crop cultivation. There are so many opportunities available to us. I would encourage you to connect with Chazon, and they have something called the Shemitah Project. I'm going to just put Chazon here in for those who might not be familiar.
IJS is also partnering with Chazon.
Yes, that's right. IJS is a partner in this project, and there are so many ideas there. And yesterday was really opening up a conversation between folks about exactly that question. So there are many, many, many thoughts through art, through tending, through releasing, through sharing of the burdens of debts. There are just so many ways that that we can make this Shemitah year regenerative. So I don't see Bruce. Do you see Bruce, Adi?
I'm sorry?
Do you see Bruce? Have we lost him?
Back.
Mark?
There
you go.
Here I am.
I'm sorry, I meant
Sorry,
Mark.
no, that's okay. My seem to have had a oops.
You got frozen and then.
There we go. Okay, I've lost my internet went out briefly. I'm sorry about that, about regeneration, but what I was just about to open my mouth to say that it's worth, I think, for people to understand in Jewish mysticism, at least, there is this kind of very powerful, perhaps could be problematic concept that what we do as human beings actually impacts the cosmos, that there's a symbiotic relationship, which is emphasized or elevated within Jewish mysticism, right? And I think in terms of this idea of our practice actually allowing the divine, however, whatever language you want to use, to regenerate is actually a palpable thing, that God is in need of us to regenerate. It's just not a one-way street.
It kind of blows my
Maybe you
mind.
just said all of that.
No, I don't know that I did say all of that. I appreciate that you brought it in. It blows my mind because I talked a little bit about Abraham and Moses and how we have an effect on God and God transforms based on us.
Right.
And
Yes.
also
Right.
how we might not be able to see spirit, but we can see spirit transforming people whose spirits we've touched, or the earth whose spirit we touched. So, the idea of quantum physics and the idea that every action creates a reaction, and everything we do ripples out and ripples out and ripples out. And the idea of people sitting and meditating and changing the energy of water. There's just a lot of capacity for spirit to be transformed.
It's a good reminder that what we're doing, even what we just did for whatever 10 minutes of sitting in silence, is not doing nothing. It's doing something.
That's right.
It actually has an impact, and and maybe that's a good understanding about Shemitah, that we are taking action by letting go, that has an impact in the world. And just as people beautifully offered healing thoughts and prayers for people, and thoughts of comfort for those who are grieving or have terrible recent losses, those have an impact, so we're not involved in navel gazing here or removing ourselves from the work, but actually to the contrary, we can have an impact. It's quite an amazing thing about Jewish tradition, I think, that idea, like you're pointing out, not only that those characters change God's mind, as it were, but that the Torah presents it as God basically saying, "Go ahead, please change my mind." I'm, basically expressing a desire and a need for a human response that will impact the cosmic system in some way.
The human partnership.
And Heschel writes about this a lot too, of course, in God in search of human beings, right? That there's a yearning. There's a yearning in the cosmos that is reaching out to us, and that we're tuning into that. Not to anthropomorphize it. Is that like that word?
And I think that's one of the challenging things, is that we can anthropomorphize, and that's why I was saying that when we reach out and we touch someone, and we see the effect of the sharing of our spirit transform them, it's one of the ways that we can actually materially connect with something that may feel very challenging sometimes to understand, or to grok, if you will.
Yeah. Well, we're at the end of time here, and sometimes I feel like it's implicit, but it seems like we need to make it explicit that we are certainly, what we're talking about here, this conversation is very much about what's going on with climate and the impact that we're seeing this year, and understanding that perhaps, Robin, I guess, as someone who is, a committed Jewish environmentalist and embodied practice and meditation teacher, you get this, certainly more than most, that these symptoms could be understood as I experienced it as a crying out of the planet and of the cosmos. Right. That is an expression of exactly what we were talking about. It says, let me rest, leave me be. And it's pretty loud and clear these days.
Yeah, I want to add just one last thought to that before we close, which is that I think the letting me rest and leave me be has another piece, which is so critical, that in that doing, in that letting rest, that nourishment can seep in. And that might be something for us to focus on, is where can we be where can we foster that nourishment?
Right. Thank you. Thanks for that. And bringing it back to the practice of that visceral experience of being nourished moment by moment, which I hope people can bring into the rest of their day and going forward in our lives. So thank you, as always, Robin, for the beautiful practice.
My pleasure.
The website is inthegardens.org, and look forward to having you back soon, Robin. And great to be with you all today. Look forward to sitting into Shabbat together with Shuli Passow. Hope to see you then all.
Have a blessed
Have a good
day,
rest of your
everybody.
day.